back up, right? Yes.
Yeah.
So first set of business is to approve minutes from April 6, 2016. If you want to review them quickly.
Is there any way we can get these minutes before the meeting, ever? Or are they just getting written kind of the night before?
I can send them out when I send out the agenda.
That'd be great, actually, just to have a little more time to read at leisure. Thank you.
And I need a motion then whenever you're ready.
Just one addition, and it's actually not even an edit. Buses are still on Wyoming, so if we could just take care of that and kind of a mandate, get them off the block. Buses are still on Wyoming near the tennis courts. Twice this week.
What days were they there?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
And one day, whenever there was an event last week, they shifted off Girard and they're in front of Monroe at the T.
I'm sorry.
I know you're sorry.
It's been addressed numerous times with the athletic director. I apologize that the buses are still on the streets because we are aware of that safety concern. I'm going to have to speak with the athletic director again to ensure that those buses are not there. But thank you for informing me of that, and I'll take care of that right now with an email. Thank you.
Okay, we will now discuss current projects.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, I have 4 quick updates on the current projects, and then we have a few discussion items towards the end. I'm going to start with the football field fence project. This is more or less an update from what we discussed last week. You saw these plans, not last week, last month at the last committee meeting. These plans are basically the changes that were made were to incorporate the tennis courts. So we had the two architects talk and basically combine their plans. And the only other addition is the paving that you see at the bottom right-hand corner. Those are pavers down by the concession stand and leading out from the field house. The gate stayed the same from what we discussed last week or last month, and this is just basically an update on that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump around a little bit and go right to the tennis court renovation. Basically the update there is we are working with the borough at the moment to work on the stormwater plan, land development plan, and any permitting we would need. We are still on schedule to advertise early July and start construction shortly thereafter. So that was just a quick update on that. then I'll go back to B. The facility storage building and oil tank removal. The board approved the proposal at the last board meeting, and I'm working with the architect to start the planning process, engineering process, and still working on a rendering to get you something that's very specific. We did one rendering, but it was kind of rushed, so I told him to go back, and I want to make sure we have it precise to scale, exactly what it's going to look like, so you should have to see that shortly. So that's moving along nicely. The district-wide camera upgrade. We have hit a couple snags, nothing that has impacted any budgetary dollars, but we are having difficulties in the 1938 section of this building. They continue. Finding proper wire chases, getting penetrations to the outside for the exterior cameras. Currently, all the interior cameras at all 3 schools are working and recording. So if there were to be an issue, we can pull the footage, and we've done that several times so far. The exterior cameras at the high school and at the track pavilion and Flannery Field basically are still being worked on. So they're working with us. We haven't had any change orders other than the one that you saw on the last board agenda, but we're moving along. It's just taking a little longer than we anticipated. Any questions on any of that?
When you met with some parents at the Hills the other day about their security concerns, when that security committee that kind of exists, I was informed that 2 exterior cameras may have been discussed about at one particular back entrance door that raised a flag, and then there's somebody somewhere else maybe in the building. I'm not sure if 2 was the number. Maybe it was just the one at door 4.
Yeah, the door 4 right there at the 1st and 2nd grade hallway. It kind of sits in the back where the wooded area is. Yes, that was discussed. And basically, I said that's absolutely something we could expand upon at some point due to if we have the proper funding. What's nice about our system is we can expand upon it, continue to add hard drives for storage, and there's really infinite number of cameras we can add. Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry, door 4 doesn't have a camera, is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. That's okay. It has one in the interior of the building, facing down the hallway, but it doesn't have one on the exterior, kind of facing the back of the building in the wooded area. Okay. All right, I'm going to go on to new business. The Environmental Club landscaping project. I followed up with the concerns of the board about who would maintain the new beds and who would replace any flowers or any plants if they were to die. And Mrs. Phillips said they would continue to raise money and they would take care of them as best as possible. They couldn't guarantee they would replace it immediately when something happened, but they will take care of their beds. That's their intent. So there you go. There you go. Okay. All right. The junior-senior high school HVAC control concern. Please feel free to stop me at any point if you have any questions. Basically, about last Wednesday, the brain that controls the chiller, the cooling tower, and a majority of the building is controlled by NRG. NRG is a company that we had in here for years and years and years, and their controls basically died. And I've been working with NRG with solutions. This one main controller, hopefully, I was hoping to be able to replace it and move on, but it is far too old and the licensing is no longer supports this control. So, I'm looking at other options. Luckily, my predecessor, about 2 years ago, started a replaced the air handler in the cafeteria. And he had the foresight to start a control infrastructure that mirrors the controls we have at the other buildings, at West Reading and the Hills, which is through Train. I'm looking into two options. One being contact Energy and look at having them install their new system here at the high school, and also Train to see what it would cost to expand their system that's here now in basically just the cafeteria. They're nowhere else in the building. NRG's coming in about just to do the one controller, one of them, and we have probably 10 to 15 throughout the high school. You're at between 10 and 20,000 for one. There's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of wiring, there's a lot of man hours involved. It's not just a simple circuit board.
Are all the controls right now dead, or is it just one out of the 15?
It's just one, but unfortunately that one carries a majority of the building.
It's the main.
Definitely over 50%. Yes, it's the main one. So currently, right now, the reason the school is being cooled is we are running the system in manual. And basically what that means is either myself, my HVAC technician, or at the moment we have a trained technician sitting in the boiler room and acting as the brains. He's turning off pumps, turning on pumps, making adjustments to water temperature, making sure the cooling tower is filled. It's quite the process, but it can be done in manual till we come up with a long-term solution. And at the moment we don't have one from Train, but I'm still working on that and should have something more to report out to you sooner than later. Unfortunately, this is going to be considered an emergency repair, and the minute I have information, I will send it out to the board, and hopefully we can get some resolution sooner than later. So that's where we stand. Any questions? That was a lot.
How old is that circuit?
At least early 90s. I'm not exactly sure. Oh yeah, we've had it replaced a couple times. Unfortunately, that particular controller is now obsolete, and they don't even support it. Even if they were to find a used controller somewhere, they couldn't license it. It's that old. Yeah.
So one of the options would be you could get one new controller at between $10,000 and $20,000 from NRG.
Correct.
Which would at least put a Band-Aid on the situation. It would work.
It would work, but that wouldn't be my recommendation, just because if the intent is to at some point continue our standard with Train, I feel as it would be throwing good money at a Band-Aid. Train could also provide that Band-Aid and incorporate the infrastructure we have that is currently working onto their system. And that's what I'm looking at the feasibility at right now. And that way we would have one brain, so to speak. Yes.
So you almost are in a position where you have to choose our system now that you're going to go forward with, that you thought you might have had a little more time?
That's accurate. That's accurate. Oh, I'm not using it.
That's okay, that's okay. On your to-do list, this obviously shoots straight up to number one in the needs category, correct? Right, and the number of people that this affects.
Correct.
Right, thank you.
I'm also going to look at, just have Train look at conceptually, since we need to do the controls, they're also going to take a really hard look at the chiller and the cooling tower as well while they're here, and that way to see if it's more cost effective to incorporate it all at once or do it in stages. So we're looking at every option. I believe we have a meeting with Train next week to kind of sit down and discuss, so we should have something for you sooner than later.
And this will continue for another week?
Yes, yes. Luckily, my HVAC technician is back next week, so I'm Carrie this week. So once he gets back, it should run a little smoother. Yeah, exactly. It's fun to hang out in the boiler room. I really enjoy it. It's always a good time. Yeah. Today I will.
But you're still having to have someone physically sitting there.
Currently, Dave Waldman from Train is chiller room right now, running it for today's not only AP testing, but this motivational speaker we have today.
And weekends also?
So, well, yeah.
Just turn it on.
No.
So because we're in AP testing, that was one of the things that Mike and we had the show over the weekend. So very concerned about what events are happening in the building, that we had to come up with Plan B for making this happen. So I appreciate, Mike, what you're doing to make this work. I mean, we just, it's an emergency fix, but we also have to do the fix in the most cost-effective way possible. We know, and we've talked about this, that we have antiquated systems here. And to your point earlier, Mike, about Craig having worked on the air handler earlier, part of that, we have a number of different systems operating in the district. And part of this vision that Mike continues is to bring one operating system, because it makes it difficult when you have this happen. So, but you've done a nice job, and I thank you for what you're doing, including sitting in the toilet tower.
Do you have any sense of how long, from the time that the decision is made of which way we're gonna go, how long it will take to get the controls in?
Well, I'll know that better in about a week, but right now, I could only speculate that if we were to decide to go with Train, they could probably provide us with a Band-Aid pretty quickly to at least be, because what's nice about that is all the equipment that NRG is controlling is primarily Train equipment. So they have the expertise to be able to trick it to run properly without any automation. So that should buy us some time.
And Train is the system that we have in the hills that we're working towards.
Cor-
towards.
Correct. Train is the building automation system at the Hills and at West Reading. NRG controls the field house and the high school. So that's where we stand with that. And the next two should be pretty quick. Replacement floor scrubber. About 10 years ago, actually it's 11 years ago, I believe the facilities director was Mark Dawson. He bought about five auto scrubbers for the district that basically went in every building, every large area. One of them has met its life, and basically one of the major components in it, we're talking about circuit boards. The charging circuit board that costs roughly $3,000 died. So my recommendation is to not replace it or not repair it, I should say, and replace it. I've been looking into, with my head custodian, we're gonna set up some demos for some new floor scrubbers, and my goal is to carry on a floor program that I used at Albright. Basically, the floor machines are very sophisticated, and they can reduce manpower significantly. They make auto scrubbers now that can strip up to 4 coats of wax in one strip, one swipe. So I want to start looking at different auto scrubbers that could help our summer cleaning program become more efficient, and cut down on workman's comp injuries also by, currently we strip the old-fashioned way, chemical stripper with a mop. It works, but it's not very efficient. So this auto scrubber would be a little bit more sophisticated than the other ones in the district, but we could use it everywhere. We could transport it and take it to every school and definitely get our money's worth out of it. I got a couple quotes. They're ranging between $8,000 and $10,000 roughly for the type of scrubber I'm looking at. I'm definitely going to do my due diligence and make sure we're either taking advantage of state contracting or getting multiple bids from multiple vendors. This just happened last week. Wanted to bring it to your attention. So that's kind of where we stand on the floor scrubber. It's not a real exotic item, but it's definitely something that could help out my staff in some point. Okay. Last but definitely not least, football field sound replacement system. Sound system replacement. Having trouble talking today. As many of you may or may not know, we've had some issues with the sound system just due to its age. We have we have times where we have to, make repairs and we've replaced parts on it, and it's just years and years past its lifespan. Another potential positive is if we were to upgrade, we're looking at potentially using new speakers that are directed directly at the field and at the stands to not have any overflow of sound into the neighborhood. That has been a concern. I know Frank Ferrandino and I have talked about that in years past. He brought this to my attention. We looked into it. We brought one vendor out so far and looked into different options. He would also like a wireless mic to go along with it, because currently to sing the national anthem, I think they hand a wired mic out the window and the person stands on the top bleacher. Little things like that. This could be very versatile, and currently we have a quote for roughly $8,000. So $8, yes. So Frank's going to look into options for donations and see if he can reach out to some of the organizations that use it, both in-house and also outside groups. But we're definitely going to do a demo first before we do anything. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention at this moment.
So we are going to maybe request from lacrosse and football and for some donations for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's, we still have some more work to do on what our recommendation is going to be, but this is just pretty conceptual at the moment. It's also another potential issue is those speakers that we currently have on top, we have to carry them up a ladder and take them in and out. One of my guys actually, and it just seems like a workman's comp nightmare to me. So that was another motivation for me to look at permanent options. So basically outdoor speakers that we could mount directly and we'll just forget about it. So still in the middle of looking into that. I'll have more to report out next month. Flannery Field. I apologize. I sent out the new agenda, but did not print out the new agenda. I am sorry. Yes, Flannery Field. Basically, up at Flannery Field, a couple improvements have come to my attention. Just going to name a couple of them, and then we can kind of talk through them. One being turn 4 on the track has a couple ripples in it, some elevated spots. This happened about 5 years ago, from what I understand. The oak tree that sits about 10 feet away from the track, the roots heaved the track. The fix that we did years ago was we trenched around the track, cut the roots, killed them with herbicide, and they haven't got any worse over the years, but the hump is still there. That's one of the concerns. We're looking into a possible fix that we're hoping may work. We're waiting until we have a warmer day with some heavy sun, and we're going to try to roll them out and roll them down to see if that helps. That was one of my grounds foremen, my grounds guy had that idea, so we're going to give that a shot. The only other real repair for that is to cut out that section and repave it to get that section level. Obviously, along with that, I would recommend removing that tree, just so in the future it's pretty big and it's too close to the field, not only for the roots but also the leaves and the mildew and all that will build up underneath there. That's one of the issues. The second issue is the fencing that basically goes around the entire perimeter of Flannery Field. It's in need of major repair. There are holes, there are different components that, some of the fabric, when I say fabric I mean chain link, that needs to be reattached. I got a couple prices for the repair and also the replacement. At this point, the recommendation from my office would be definitely replacement. But I think we should think strategic, that if there are bigger plans for that area up there at some point, to incorporate replacing the fence with that, because if I know it was talked about before I got here about expanding the track to 8 lanes, that may incorporate moving the fence or shifting the fence, or that's hard to say without doing a full full-blown architectural design. So that's number 2. I don't know.
Mike, how much was what were some of the estimates that you got for replacement?
To replace them, about $50,000, and that's to replace chain link to chain link, new uprights, new chain link fencing, new cross members, all that. Repainting the track was the third one that I almost forgot. The lines are becoming worn and faded. You can still see them. I haven't received any complaints from the coaches, but they don't always come to me. So, to repaint the track, you're looking at about $6 to $7 grand, and the time frame to do that is you need to shut it down for at least a week to get proper curing. So we'd have to be strategic when we would choose to do that. Those are the issues that were brought to my attention, but I'm willing to discuss anything else.
So I'd like to thank you publicly for the tours that you gave me. Mike extended an invitation, and I took him up on it, and luckily got a private tour of a couple different facilities. Up at the Flannery Field, you mentioned that those locker rooms are actually in really nice condition, but when they were built, no heating or air conditioning, or just heating is available in that outbuilding that houses the storage and the snack bar.
Correct. There's ventilation. There's no conditioned air whatsoever. We have to winterize that specific building. So that creates a challenge for me in the end of fall and early spring, when we're still having kind of sporadic weather conditions, especially when our teams make the playoffs consistently like they do. We have to kind of be very. We have to watch the buildings and make sure the pipes won't freeze. That's really, so we bring in portable heaters, and we make sure we're doing our best to preserve our infrastructure. So that is another improvement that would be nice up there, to make that facility a 12-month facility rather than half the year.
How many teams use that facility?
Track, baseball, and softball. And I think soccer, and lacrosse goes up there every now and then for overflow.
So that field is regulation for lacrosse and maybe?
I don't believe so. Well, the soccer field technically is, but we don't typically line it, they just practice up there. You're welcome.
You had said that it's not your recommendation to repair. However, if we're looking at a $50,000 new fence and then a possible expansion, or considering other things, I would say that's going to take a while. So in the interim, is it possible to repair some of the pieces that are really in bad shape, and how much would that be?
Sorry if I might have misspoke. I wasn't recommending replacing.
Right.
Repairing, yes, you're looking at roughly $16,000. I have one quote so far to, basically what I tasked them to do is walk around, we walked around with them and fill the holes, replace any cross members that are falling down, and basically just secure the fence. It's going to be tough to match up the color, because it's right now a faded green kind of thing, so it's going to be tough to match it in, but we could do our best to at least secure it. Yep. Yep. Sorry. It's a large fence. And there's also some gates that are in disrepair, and they would need to be replaced. We have them, being held together with chains rather than proper latching and locks.
What about the line painting? Is that something that we can do can we do that in-house, or is that something that has to be contracted out?
Contracted out.
Quote?
Roughly $7,000. That's okay. I threw a lot of numbers real quick. I'm sorry.
The steamrolling idea.
Yes.
Sorry. The steamrolling idea with the track, I mean, I don't think that will cause more damage. I'm a little concerned.
It's not a large roller. We have plans to borrow from the borough.
Okay.
It's only a 1 ton. I don't foresee it doing a lot of damage, if any. Because I think it's gonna definitely decrease it. Will it make it completely flush? I doubt it, but it's definitely gonna decrease that. Because really all that's under there is just a void of dead wood. So obviously we're gonna go in as safely as possible, and when we get it on there, we know it's something that we're gonna back up.
Are you telling me to wait until after the track season, or?
Yes, and when it gets warmer, that's the short-term solution. We need warmer temps to be able to do what we need to do. Now, to do a complete cutout and replacement, that could be done sooner. I don't have an estimate on how long that is. Sorry,
Can I ask just when you have a chance to follow up with the coaches? Because I was hearing concerns about the lines and the Shaner meet and officials, and I would hate to see that in jeopardy if our lines aren't visible going forward. And when was the last time the track was resurfaced, and what's the life of a track?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure when it was resurfaced last, but I can tell you about a year ago when we started the tennis court project, Brian Bingaman from Turf Track and Court, I took him up there and just kind of gave him a tour of our facilities, and he gave me his verbal professional opinion that it was wearing, but it was still serviceable at this point. He wouldn't have recommended replacement, and that was about a year ago. But I can get back to you on the other information.
Fence that with the repair or replacement, would there be any cost savings if we had that looked at too in conjunction with the fence at the tennis courts? Or is that two totally different types of fences?
Two totally different types of fences for sure. At this point, we do not have a bidder for the fence. I don't see significant, if any, cost savings to do it as one project rather than to do it as separate. Obviously, if we went to the replacement version, we'd have to go out to bid anyways separately. But yeah, at this point, I don't think that would be significantly cost savings.
So I'll piggyback off of Maria's questioning. The Shaner meet is this week or next? So that ripple in turn 4, is that a concern heading into the weekend?
I can tell you it's not been brought to my attention other than I'm aware of it. I haven't heard from any of the track coaches that they're concerned about it for the meet this week. It was there last year, but I would have to ask Frank if he heard any grave concerns. I'm not sure. So.
And then to piggyback again about the 2 separate projects, you mentioned earlier that repairing the Flannery Field fence would likely need to involve lots of conversation about what that facility is used for, and if anything within is going to get switched around to carry the volume of traffic and activity that goes on up there throughout the year. So that's not necessarily a just let's replace it. That's let's start having the conversation about a facility that gets a lot of use.
I agree. I would recommend if we were looking at replacing it at some point, it should be a part of the bigger picture because there's a lot of moving parts up at that field. It's a large piece of land, but we want to make sure we're using it as efficiently as possible. Repairing it, on the other hand, we can repair it in place. That wouldn't be a problem, other than the cost. But yeah, just if we look to replace it, to think about the bigger picture, expanding to 8 lanes, where the high jumps go, where the long jumps go, things of that nature, just to make sure everything fits. it would be more costly to go back and move the fence after that project is done.
Other than the obvious, is there a benefits experience from being linked? Because we're hosting a meet,
Mhm.
good. I mean,
Yeah.
again, other than the obvious, it's more lanes, is there a benefit to it?
I would have to defer to Frank Ferrandino. He's the one that suggested it to me, and I don't know enough about track dance, bro. Sorry.
I ran track, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I was very good at it, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Because we're hosting the sharing, so it's in compliance, I guess, so that's where.
I'm sure we're in PIAA compliance. Maybe it just lets us add the capacity of runners and teams that can compete, is my guess.
Sorry, I'm getting this one.
But that would evolve in that whole conversation once a, plan was sort of set forth. It seems, I don't know, the Shaner meet's been going on for a really, really long time with 6 lanes, so to your point, and if that takes up space of other use, that would probably come into our conversation when we were vetting this project. Thank you.
Any other questions about that plan? I will have it on the agenda next month too, so we can have some follow-up discussion and go from there.
I do have one more question.
In your opinion, that field, when you look at small schools and big schools who are focusing efforts on kind of creating a go-to place that's multi-use and, holds a lot of activity, that would be a pretty optimal place up there, in your opinion?
In my opinion, absolutely. It's a large area. The soccer field can be used for multiple sports. The baseball outfield can be used for multiple sports. The really only constraint is softball and the amount of how big it is, so yeah, we use it for multiple sports now, so I don't think that would change. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Well, that's all I have, Mrs. Reese. Thank you.
Yeah, Sandy, with your permission, I wanted to report on the meeting with the neighbors as far as what happened at that meeting. George can chime in whenever you want to. I'll turn this off. We met with them this past Monday. We did a little walk tour of the field. It was George and I, and discussed some various issues about the fence and where it would be and what it would look like. We talked initially about relocation of the fence, moving it to different places, and I kind of discussed, George discussed some logistical issues that would create for us as far as ways to use that area. Moving the fence wasn't really very feasible for a number of different reasons. You move it in, you create a constriction with regard to football attendees. You move it out, you start dealing with the impact on our smaller children playing football in that area, practicing in that area. So I think we got to a point where we got to a conversation about keeping the fence where we proposed to do it. And the conversation then turned to height and composition of the fence. I think we looked at a couple of fences surrounding that, not that that's really relevant to anything, but just to see what other things look like. And there were some other fences there that really didn't have the brick columns. And that seemed to be the big problem, is the brick columns being on there. We talked about a smaller fence, 4 to 5. I think what we have there is 5 with the columns at 6. Okay. Yeah, 5 with the columns 6. I don't think, we talked about 4, but I don't think that height would be a problem. I think that'd be okay. The issue or the concern is the columns. And I don't know personally how that impacts stability of the fence. I still think at some level you would need columns around the gates, an anchor point. So I think you would need columns around the gates. And Scott, could you pull that rendering up real quick, if you don't mind?
Just need you to come over with my your password. I got it.
Okay.
I don't
we
want to
have
change
a couple of entrance points, George. I think we do
Top
in that area. I don't know if there's 1 or 2. That's why I wanted to look at and check. So I think you would need columns there for support purposes. There you go. The question is, when you're looking up in this area, up in that corner there, I think is that a gate there, or is the gate down here?
Both.
Both places, and in the middle too?
Well, closer to the,
Right there?
yeah.
Okay. I think at some level, I think you would need some level of columns. I don't know from a support perspective, I'm not an engineer, obviously. You know, I don't know whether there'd be a way to support the fence otherwise besides the gates without using columns and how that would look and how that would work. I mean, if we, the one thing that I don't know, I don't think we have a donor wall in this one, do we? I don't think, again, unless people here don't want a donor wall, I've never heard a lot of objections from their end to that donor wall. If we wanted to do that yet, and that could be our mechanism to sell bricks, to fundraise, rather than the columns around the field. So I mean, I think we made some progress. The one thing that they talked about and requested is that we continue the conversation about some of these issues. If these form a basis for perhaps a resolution, that we have further conversations about it, investigate whether these suggestions are feasible from an engineering perspective, and obviously whether the board as a whole wants to even go in this direction. So George, I'll let you add to that if you would.
Appreciate that. Scott's point, I mean, we shared a couple concerns and a couple laughs. There was some good conversations going on. I think I should point out some other concerns other than just the fence is what's actually going inside. There was some speculation about the scoreboard on the one corner. And, you know, I think that's the reason there's not at that, right at the one corner here, people heard that there's some sort of scoreboard going on.
I think he's referring to here.
Some other concerns again were lights, and they said no. And then, you know, another one was some advertising and billboards on the inside of the fence. You know, I said it's not really a NASCAR, you know, so, and I just wanted to address that publicly that, I mean, you know, but these are very valid concerns that, I mean, I 100% agree with them. So I wanted to point that out. Some other issues that were brought out is adding some life to it, low shrubbery on the outside to kind of tone it a little bit. I just go through my notes. Yes, you know, we talked about the pillars, the size of the fence, and then adding shrubbery on the outside facing the street to kind of make it a little more. I don't know the word I'm looking for. Green and neighborhood-like. And they're all nice ideas, really. I'm so sorry.
Sorry about this whole new concept. Yes, we were talking about the green shrubbery, the billboard, making sure that, you know, the light issue and concern and the endorsements and advertisements on the inside of the fence.
Well, just to be clear, I mean, there are going to be no lights.
Yes.
There's not going to be an additional scoreboard, and there are.
Right, but again, these are,
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
yeah.
it's still laid out there, just to address the concern.
and I agree with those
No
concerns,
additional
yeah.
lights, no lights, no additional scoreboard.
We made that very clear,
Yeah.
that's not going to be the case.
And then some other things with the corners being symmetric, but so there's the corner up there for safety, I think we addressed on Gerard and going over. Again, it was a good conversation. I think we talked about a lot of things, and there were some perceptions, and I think, again, it was, I think it was a very positive conversation to talk about it. So I'm glad we were there. The mosquitoes were pretty rough that day, but we toughed it out. But as
They left me alone, George, professional person. They don't bother me.
I smell the food.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time to go out there and meet with them.
If anybody has any questions or comments about the meeting or results or anything like that? Thanks.
Meeting adjourned.